Welcome to today's Edible Cities Network event workshop on the topic of how to engage and retain employees and volunteers in your Edible City initiative. We will get started with a welcome and introduction from Ina Säume, who's the Edible Cities Network project leader. And we will then provide you with some input on the topic. And this will be followed by an interactive session where we will look at the employer value proposition, which we will also introduce to you during the input, and then come back to discuss results from the session and an outlook of your next steps. So with that said, I hand over to Ina.
Yeah, thank you, Alexandra, and welcome also from my side in name of the coordinators from the EduCitNet project. As we normally try to be as inclusive as possible, and possibly this video will be seen also by new people, some few words on the EduCitNet project, EduCitNet in a nutshell. Next slide. What are Edible City solutions? We understand by using this term all different forms of urban farming, food production, distribution, and consumption. And all these solutions use innovative principles of ecological design, closed material, and energy flows. And of course, they have a lot of economic benefits. They produce green shops, save resources, reduce food miles, and of course also reduce health costs. And besides these economic benefits, there are social cultural benefits and also environmental benefits that you can see on this figure. Next. We have a mission and a co-creation strategy in this project. So the idea is to mainstream Edible City solutions as a strategic step towards the development of socially inclusive, sustainable, productive, biodiversity-friendly, resilient, and healthy cities. We invite with these Edible City solutions, citizens to co-create the sustainable development of their society, to proactively change the urban environment to their own benefit, and to induce also paradigm shift of the lifestyle of the citizen. Next. We have different local and regional networks, which are based on communities of knowledge and practice. In the EduCitNet cities and in their regions, we have started a collective learning process, which leads to a comprehensive and co-developed knowledge base with contributions from theoretical and practical context, and in our city teams, which are the backbone of the process. We all are experts, and yeah, they function as steering groups with citizens, SMEs, NGOs, and other relevant organizations that are involved in the sustainable development of an Edible City. We co-create and test Edible City solutions in living labs, and we co-develop sustainable master plans for Edible Cities of the future. Next. Yeah, and these are the cities that are currently involved in co-creation and networking. Next. And here you can have some short insights into the living labs. There's also a publication we will share in the chat about this. And yeah, based on the experiences in the living labs, but also in the other cities, we have analyzed potentials for upscaling and practices for upscaling of the initiatives that are involved in Edible Cities, which are mostly social entrepreneurs We identified constraints and challenges and developed methodologies and formats for successful scaling by a mixed method approach. Next. And finally, we identified, based on these 5 different scaling pathways that you can check in this paper. And next slide. One issue that we realized in the analysis is that the social entrepreneurs that are like the main actors in the edible city are often neglecting the economic dimension. And this leads to an economic fragility and self-exploitation. And we identified the need to become a self-caring entrepreneur. So the idea was to open eyes on sustainable business models that you can also find on our website, information on this. Next. We have developed different let's say methodologies to focus on or to develop innovative business models, making values visible, that you can check as well in our toolbox and in our website. We observed that as edible cities are often depending on project funding, often initiatives go into project funding traps. This is often related to the short-term funding versus long-term goals. There are different pros and cons of professional funding acquisition for the social entrepreneurs, but there's often a limited funding schemes and a lot of bureaucracy, which is quite complicated. And of course, also there's the issue on the dependency on funders. So a possible way to go out of this is, of course, to put more resources to acquisition of funding, diversity funding sources, and also becoming independent from external funds step by step. Next. An issue that is today our main topic is that the social entrepreneurs are also often unsocial entrepreneurs. We have seen issues of self-exploitation and personal fluctuation, and a lot of volunteers that are engaged, but also after a certain while they step out, and then it becomes problematic. And so we propose to go from volunteering to just wages and take care for your people. Nevertheless, it's very important to do advocacy. Advocacy has been identified as a key. Be aware of and connect with political actors at local and regional level, inform about your goals, achievement, and need, and join forces with other urban food initiatives. There is a strength in numbers. Next. Yeah, please have a look on our website, on our different channels. And now I hand it over again to Alexandra. And yeah, I wish a nice workshop and discussions.
Thank you very much, Ina. And next up, I would like to ask Klaus to introduce the input, please.
My name is Klaus Fichter. I'm head director of the Borderstep Institute. We have been accompanying and supporting the Edible Cities initiative now for a couple of years, and are also providing some input today. So that will be jointly done by Alexandra, who is the key person from our side, and myself. And as Ina was already explaining, how important it is of taking care of your people in this kind of initiative. That's the human resource aspect is crucial for being sustainable and for being successful. So that's why we have a look on how to keep the employees in your initiative or the volunteers. And there are some key strategies which we just very briefly want to introduce to you. We are really brief here, and you will get the slides later on, so you can check again some of the aspects. And so when discussing how do we involve, how can we take care of the people in these initiatives, it might be helpful to have some to consider what we call here the human resource management cycle. So and there are different aspects here. So on the top you see attraction. If you want to get engaged people, motivated people, of course you have to attract them, you have to be interesting for them. And if you're successful, then you can recruit them either as employees or as volunteers. And then if you succeed to get them interested and engaged, then the onboarding process is really important, as always as you want, but this is something really to consider. And empowerment of your volunteers and employees, that's enablement. That's a very important aspect too. We will look into that later on a little bit. Of course, the development could be career development in your initiative, could be some personal development, these kind of aspects, which are basically relevant for all kind of institutions, but of course for this type of initiatives as well. And retention, so how do we keep people, keep them on board? So there are some basic strategies. We only go briefly on this now. Not to be too detailed at this point. We have the opportunity to discuss things later on in the interactive session. So when it comes to recruitment, you need people. You want to have more people. Then, of course, it's decisive how you look for new people, and for later on to keep them in your initiative. It's very crucial how I find, select, etc. these people. So, and the focus should always be on the long-term goals of the initiatives. That's important really to bring that across, and to have a structured onboarding process. Of course, there are many good examples, so that's no need to reinvent the wheel here. So we can learn from other initiatives. And then, of course, it's important to keep people and to have a good organizational environment. The culture which you develop is important. And Ina was pointing out it's not always easy because it's underfunded very often. So doing these things is not easy. But we have to consider, for example, also aspects of compensation, of benefits, of recognition. That's not always money, of course. So there's other ways of especially if you talk about volunteers, of saying this is important to consider. Yeah, and the job satisfaction and the emotional satisfaction, these are things we have to look at. And this aspect we have to keep in mind when later on discussing all these aspects. So we are brief here. So this is this human cycle which we looked at. And today we decided we want to more look on the volunteer side. Of course, we have employees too. So both are extremely relevant, but let's have a look more on the volunteer side. And there are also some aspects just as an element which we should keep in mind. So the onboarding, we just said sometime, of course, you need to take time to introduce your initiative and the task. That's very important. sometimes this is overlooked, but there needs to be really time to explain these things. Clarify expectations and questions, of course, is very important to do that in the beginning. What do people expect? What questions do they have? Why do they participate? What is important to them? That's also combined with really sharing space, having space for integrating their experiences, their interests. That's, of course, crucial because they are volunteers. And also, if possible, that's not always possible, but to find some kind of a mentoring possibilities. Maybe older volunteers have been more experienced helping the new ones, for example, and also provide learning opportunities. That can be really rewarding. Feedback sessions, seminars, what do we learn here in this initiative? So these are aspects which we usually could consider. Of course, then this aspect of accompanying and developing the volunteer team. Here, the different kinds of leadership are relevant, and that's a big topic. We could go have a week seminar on that, but I think situative leadership is very important because people need different kind of leadership. Sometimes they want to be more self-organized and they oriented in this kind of endeavor. Others really want to have more clear objectives and more leadership, which is taken on by some people. And of course, having clear goals. What do we want to achieve, and what do we have to learn in order to achieve our goals? That's also important. The feedback aspect I talked already about, and also maybe consider kind of volunteer careers. Is there a possibility of development over the years in the initiative? Is that something people really like to progress, and what is relevant? What do they consider to be a part of the career? So these things to be discussed. And of course, appreciation, recognizing is a core topic. Because volunteers usually are not paid, so that's a classical form of reward, and that's hardly possible here. So we have to find other ways of appreciation, of saying and making people really feel they are important what they do. So continuous and event-driven recognition is very a key point. I often think we need to say more thank you and how important the work is. The emotional connectivity is also key, because I mean that could really be the key connector to a team. So we talk, it's not only rational things, it's very much also about the emotional aspect of it. And again, allow experience, community interaction here through team events. That's also something we can maybe look at in the interactive session later on, how this could be done, whether you have some experience and how that could be implemented well. Yeah, so these are some initial thoughts. So of aspects which are relevant here. And we thought we are not too long here. We like to introduce to you one method, which Alexandra now introduces to you, which we want to work with now in the interactive session a little later. And so I hand over now to Alexandra.
Thank you, Klaus. Yes, so one very interesting tool that we will look at later on in the interactive session is the employer value proposition, or EVP. It's a tool that is used in employer branding. What do we mean by employer branding? Basically, this encompasses all the processes of promoting and communicating your initiative as the employer of choice to a desired target group. So This can take place internally, with the goal being to retain employees and volunteers and to engage them more through those enhanced communication efforts. And if this happens externally, of course, to look for new people for your organization. So essentially, employer branding is about bringing together all the external and internal communication elements, which focus on the value of belonging to your organization or initiative. So it will help you to build your image as an employer or as an organization engaging volunteers. It can help you to position yourself better and really determine who you want to reach, where, how, and with what message. And so this message is, in essence, your employer value proposition. So it summarizes all the services and benefits that employees and volunteers receive from you as an organization. And yeah, it summarizes the unique value that you can offer to them and what you can give them in exchange for the skills and experiences they contribute, the commitment they provide for your organization or initiative. So this is an important tool that we will look at today. And basically, the main elements to look at and the essential questions to ask yourself is, for one, values, your values. What do you stand for as an employer? What are the guiding principles that shape your day-to-day decision making? Maybe some prompts to get you thinking is, which words come to mind when you describe your organization? How would you describe your team? What makes up your team? Or maybe even thinking of decisions that you've made in the past month and which values exactly guided those decisions. Another element is to look at your goals. So what do you want to achieve as an employer, and how can you increase your attractiveness as an employer? So this can include looking at topics we touched on before, what kind of rewards do you offer? What kind of development opportunities do you have? Do you maybe provide one-to-one mentoring when people join your initiative? Do you provide training on sustainable farming practices? Are there specialized techniques that your people get to learn? Do you put a focus on team building? Are there shared meals taking place to connect to each other? So yeah, what sets you apart from other initiatives maybe? And identity as an organization is, of course, also a big topic. So what makes you stand out? Why would employees and volunteers want to stay with you? What do you offer? And looking at organizational culture. So who would suit your initiative? What is essentially your environment and the practices and processes of your organizational environment, and which shared beliefs and attitudes would future employees or volunteers have to bring maybe to your organization. So the functions of the EVP, if we summarize them quickly, would be, for one, to strengthen your organizational culture and identity. So the degree to which employees and volunteers just define themselves as a member of your initiative, or the extent to which they experience a sense of oneness. As I mentioned before, it helps to differentiate yourself. So as an Edible City initiative, one of the most important ways to differentiate yourself would be via communicating your impact. What impact are you creating for the community, for the local environment, for your city? It also helps applicants and potential team members with orientation, getting to know your organization, and importantly, it also provides directional function for your organizational development. So it helps you to reflect on how you want to develop and improve as an organization. And once you have reflected on these essential elements and guiding questions, your next step would be to think about how and where to communicate your developed employer value proposition. So you would begin with specifying your target groups. Do you want to communicate internally? Do you want to recruit new people for your team and then develop tailor-made messages to these segmented groups? So you will then look at different communication channels to go through, depending on who you have specified. For example, to provide presentations internally, workshops and team events, or to also have your employees and volunteers function as advocates for your initiative. So to include them via testimonials, via blog posts, or also reaching out to their personal and professional networks. So this is a little introduction to the employer value proposition, and just a few last tips before we go on into the interactive session is to, well, basically always stay authentic and transparent. It doesn't really help to work with more general phrases because the more individual your EVP will be, the more credible it will be. And another important point is that this should definitely not be developed just on the management level, but the entire team, your employees, your volunteers should be involved. So you can carry out interviews or take surveys to get the whole team involved in developing the employer value proposition. It's also good to have specific examples of the different initiatives and schemes you provide. So going into more detail, and also letting your employees and volunteers act as multipliers of your EVP, which we already mentioned. So bring your employees and volunteers forward in the content that you will develop to communicate externally. And with that said, yeah, we would like to go into the interactive session, which will take place in Miro. So we will have three main points to kind of work through. So the first one will be to develop your employer value proposition, looking at the 4 elements that we discussed earlier. And if there is time remaining, we may also continue to look at the different communication channels you may use to develop your EVP. So the plan is to take a couple of minutes, to get familiarized with the board, and then you will have 15 to 20 minutes of individual work, so to reflect and write down your thoughts on these sticky notes on the board. And then we will go on to kind of present what you have developed and discuss this as a group. There's just one more additional slide that we add in here that we can also send you, which gives an overview of the volunteer management and coordination processes. So that will maybe also help to put it into context, just as a side note. And yeah, we say thank you for joining us. Please feel free to also go to the EdiSitNet website and look up all the different resources we have provided there. It would also be nice to see you joining our new platform that we will be launching soon, which provides a community space and a space for sharing resources. And yeah, maybe also interesting to share is another global lunch talk by EdiCitNet that we have coming up on 8th of November. Stephanie will share the link. And with that said, all the best and thank you very much.